guys, it's Nurse Jay at Nursing the Truth, and I hope everyone is having a great day. So, what are we going to talk about today? I've got so many things on my plate, physically and mentally, but that's not going to stop Nurse Jay from telling the truth, that's for sure. So, with little Sunny, the Jack Russell Terrier that I have on my lap taking a little snooze, got to do what I've got to do in a short period of time. We are going to be talking about um, the Clementine recognitions or the pseudo Clementine. Well, really, what does this have to do with the Bible per se? The information that I'm bringing to you today, the website is called pesherofchrist.com. Now, the Clementines are as important as the Acts of the Apostles, and showing that the composition of Clementine by Clement and the younger brother of James and John was between 42 AD and prior to Peter accepting Gentiles as equal and Clement's death in 99. But really, which reveals the identities of the real characters in the New Testament, which this is kind of like revealing the pesher of Christ. So a pesher is like you're writing about someone with a different name, but talking about someone else. Now, the Clementines, which, like I said, are made up of the recognitions and the Clementine homilies, are a religious romance purported to be composed by Pope Clement I. The story represents Clement search and induction into the Christian faith by Peter. But the recognitions of Clement consist of 10 books in its translation made from the Greek by Rufinus, who died in 410. The Greek form, which it was translated, is no longer in existence. See, don't you love it how the Roman Church burns everything? We can't get our hands on it. Oh, or it's underneath the Vatican, 56 miles long. So, the Greek form is the Clementine homilies. The two later epitomes of the homilies exist also, and there is a partial Syriac translation. Now, there is no doubt that there once existed a document that was used to construct the recognition in homilies. So, the need to establish the true date of origin for the Clementines. Although purported to be the works of Pope Clement I as narrator, the Clementines have been summarily dismissed by scholars or pseudo works, pretended to be the actual works of Clement. Scholars, however, have placed the dates for these works from the 2nd century all the way to the 4th. So you have these homilies that are purported to be written in the 1st century, but scholars are now saying that these dates, however, are the 2nd through the 4th. The church was real busy, you see. Now, unfortunately, many apocryphal works use this method of pretending to be the words of one or the other prophets or even, Jesus, but this has been merely a style of exposition and not mean to deceive. Now, we know that the Nag Hammadi library was found in 1945. Since Pope Clement is in fact a real person who lived in the 1st century, it ought to be logical to believe that it was written in the 1st century, right? However, what appears to most bother scholars in the church about the Clementine is the primacy of Simon Magus, who only appears in the Acts of the Apostles as the initiate who was baptized by Philip. Acts 8, 9 to 24. Now, as you know, Simon Magus, where you get the word simony from in the church, is saying to them, let me know what you're doing, and I'll give you money for it. And then he was told pretty much to get out and leave. And Simon Magus said, repent, pray for me and repent that nothing happens to me. And then from that point forward, nothing else is said about Simon Magus. There's lots of things written about Simon Magus. The late 3rd century church scholar Eusebius went to great lengths to denounce Simon Magus as a heretic. The Clementines do in fact treat Simon Magus in a not so rather good light. But the Clementines do show him as a major opponent to Peter. The scholars question how an initiate of Philip could have attained such stature in a short period of time. Although Simon appears to use tricks and magic. But Peter also appears not to be without these himself. Y'all, I don't know. I think I'm allergic to this dog. Anyway, I need a Claritin, I guess. But you see, when in the book of the Clementines and the recognitions, it talks about that Peter and Simon were in a brawl, a dualistic brawl in Rome, and that Simon Magus levitated in the air and, quote unquote, he fell off of a building and broke his leg. But Peter was doing some tricks too. So, how can you say that you're of divinity when you're doing the same thing as that other person's doing? Anyway, what is the most disturbing? Now you need to listen to this because I've read this. What is most disturbing to church authorities is that Clementines say that Simon Magus took over the organization of John the Baptist after his death. Let's read that again. Simon Magus took over the organization of John the Baptist after his death. This would clearly give him the stature to be on an equal footing as Peter in their debates. You see, from my research, Simon Magus was the second in command under John the Baptist. As Simon Magus was in Alexandria, Egypt, which was a pretty big hub of Gnosticism and the Essenes and the Therapeutai, Docianus was taking over. Simon Magus heard that John was killed and was coming. And then Simon Magus and Docianus had a fight, and then Docianus said, "You are the son." So anyway, just go ahead and look that up as well. Another problem to the church is the strong resemblance of Niceta and Aquila to James and John. If this is true, then the influence of Simon Magus and his consort Helena on Jesus is immense. His consort Helena clearly matches a Syro-Phoenician woman, as her words are directly from Matthew 15:21 through 28 and Mark 7 verse 24 through 30. She was the one female of the Gospels who appeared to speak with Jesus as his equal. In fact, it may be implied from the section in homilies that the natural daughter of Helena is Mary Magdalene. Now, it is a wonder that the church, as it did with the Dead Sea Scrolls, had to resort to phony dating to remove suspicion, rather than face the problem with dealing with the implications of a whole new version of the early church as described in Acts and Paul's epistles. The scholars and religious leaders have quickly pushed the writings later into the 3rd and 4th century. Once moved to a later century, it is easier to make the case that the content appears to be of Ebionite origin. The Ebionites, who were active in the 2nd to the 4th century, were condemned as heretics, though the Ebionites have a strong similarity to Jewish Christianity. But after the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 and the crushing of the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135, there was not much left to be called Jewish Christian. The Ebionites really began from the dust of Jewish Christianity, and this sixth principle are clearly not contained in the Clementines' recognitions. Now that the Dead Sea Scrolls of 47 and 56 have come to light, it appears that a Jewish Essene faith did actually exist at Qumran. The efforts to try to place all the writings in Qumran to 150 BC are beginning to fail, and more scholars are accepting that there is a similarity between the organization of Qumran and the early Christian church. Perhaps there was not a sudden flowering of Christianity. The philosophy presented in the Clementines clearly appears to be a struggle within the groups to define what their difference was between Jewish Christian and Christian. On that basis alone, its philosophy has to be from the 1st century. What this discussion sets out to do is to arrive at and prove the date at which the original philosophy and biographies written by Clement were merged into a larger moral story. If a date for the writings that we now possess can be shown to be within the 1st century, then the Clementines will need to be given more attention. Their information would therefore be as important in Acts in revealing the history of the church after the so-called crucifixion. So I hope you like that, guys. Read the Clementine recognitions and the Clementine homilies at your disposal, free on the internet, and you will see that this thing, friends, does not match up. Until next time, Hotep, Ashe, and always remember who you are, my friends. Have a wonderful day.